Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and Restless official. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Abby and Devon were kissing at society as Tessa walked in. Tessa inquired whether she was early, but Abby assured her that she was right on time. Abby thanked Tessa for taking the time to meet with her, and Devon asked about Arya. Tessa gushed that the hearing aids had changed the tot's whole world. Devon headed out, and Tessa said Abby's invitation had intrigued her, since Abby had asked to meet with only her and not Mariah, too. Tessa surmised that the meeting wasn't entirely social. Abby asked how things were going with Tessa's modeling gig at Marchetti. Tessa admitted that it had been a little slow, since fashion marketing was cyclical and the work on the spring line was done. Abby assumed it wasn't a full-time commitment, and Tessa wondered if that had something to do with why she was there. Abby announced that she had a proposition for Tessa. Abby enthused that if everything went as planned, she'd be joining the board at Chancellor Winter's, and she wanted to be as involved there as they'd let her be. Abby continued that she'd need a day manager at Society, and Tessa knew how the restaurant operated because she'd worked there before. Abby asked if Tessa would be interested in the job, but Tessa protested that she hadn't done much managing. Abby called Tessa a problem solver who was great with people and knew the regulars, and she thought Tessa would be a perfect fit. Tessa promised to talk to Mariah and think it over, but she questioned why a successful entrepreneur like Abby wanted to go back to an office. Abby explained that she'd been feeling restless because Society was a well-oiled machine, but talking about joining the board had excited her. Tessa offered to give Abby an answer by the next day, noting that she was excited about the idea, too. Abby and Tessa hugged goodbye as Devon returned to the restaurant. After Tessa left, Abby reported to Devon that she thought Tessa was interested, and if Tessa accepted, Abby would be one step closer to joining Devon at Chancellor Winter's. Devon said he was glad to have her join the team even though Nate thought Tucker had lost interest. Abby contended that Tucker wasn't the only reason she wanted to join the board, and she looked forward to showing Devon what she was capable of in a corporate setting and having a say in Dominic's legacy. She added that she also wanted to be more connected to Devon and his world. He loved the sound of it, and they kissed. At Newman Enterprises, Victor updated Victoria and Nick about the fire at the Oregon prison. Victor indicated that it would take weeks before the authorities could identify the bodies, but there were 6 inmates who were unaccounted for. Nick realized that Jordan could have run off in the chaos. Victoria wondered if her mom knew, and Victor shared that Nikki had freaked out when she'd seen the news report. Victoria bet Victor wished he had told Nikki himself, but Victor imagined it would have upset Nikki even more. Nick worried that with no evidence that Jordan was dead, she could be hitchhiking her way back to Genoa City. Victoria insisted that they be on high alert until they knew. Victor pledged to do everything in his power to protect Nikki, and he mentioned that he'd know where she was every minute of the day. At Newman Media, Nikki answered her landline phone, but no one was on the line. She hung up and nervously grabbed her cell phone, and she was relieved that she hadn't received any calls there. She tried to resume working, but her landline rang again. "Leave me alone," she bellowed into the phone before hanging up and sobbing. Nikki grabbed her coat and purse and headed for the door. Moments later, Victor answered a call, and he was surprised to hear Nikki had taken a rideshare. He ordered his investigator to discreetly follow her and let him know where she ended up. Nikki crept into the empty glass lounge, wearing sunglasses to hide her face. She sat at a table near the back and gestured for service. Meanwhile, Victor learned of Nikki's whereabouts from his investigator and declared that he was on his way. A short time later, Victor entered the empty glass and approached a server. Victor asked if the man had seen a woman matching Nikki's description and if she'd been drinking. The server snapped that the folks there valued their privacy, and Victor pulled out some bills and asked if that helped. Nikki spotted Victor and stayed out of sight in the back of the bar. She drunkenly sent a text message to Jack, "Call Veter. Loot him some pace to met. ASSP. Plus." At Jabot, Lauren entered Jack's office and recognized that Jack had wanted to discuss something with her in person for a while. He asked how things were at Fenmore's, and she bragged that everything was going like clockwork. He was glad to hear it, and he requested a favor. Jack informed Lauren that things were improving with Nikki, since she'd been reaching out to him after her first drink and sometimes before she succumbed to the urge. Lauren considered it progress. Jack mentioned a predicament at work that could lead to everything going wrong. He explained that Nikki hadn't yet replaced Claire as her assistant, and Audra had just left Newman Media. Jack lamented that Nikki was in a tailspin without support, and she was taking on too much at the wrong time. He worried that the stress of trying to run a division on her own while fighting her addiction was a recipe for disaster. Lauren figured that Newman would hire the best in the business, but Jack pointed out that trust was paramount with Nikki. Jack believed Nikki needed someone who knew the cast of characters and could show kindness and discretion without being a pushover. He added that the person had to understand the position was temporary until Nikki got control of her life again. Jack asked if Lauren could let her staff run Fenmore's while she stepped in to help Nikki. Lauren appreciated Jack's faith in her, but she balked because she wasn't in the media world. Jack countered that she wouldn't be producing or editing, but only serving as backup on internal things that she'd dealt with before, like negotiations and contracts. Lauren doubted she was the right person, but Jack pleaded that Nikki needed someone she could count on. He asserted that he'd do it himself if Nikki hadn't been adamant that Victor stay unaware that Jack was involved. Jack pointed out that Victor was fond of Lauren and she'd never been married to Nikki or been Victor's sworn enemy. Lauren felt blessed with an incredible management team who was excellent at managing things day to day, and she figured she could step in to help Nikki for a bit while still being available for the big things at Fenmore's. Lauren insisted on knowing whether Nikki was open to the arrangement or if she would see it for what it really was, watching to make sure Nikki didn't take that first drink. Jack shared that Nikki knew he'd been considering someone to recommend as her COO, but she didn't know it was Lauren. Jack reiterated that Nikki needed a right hand to depend on, and he anticipated that she'd be thrilled if she had a friend she could truly trust. Lauren imagined it would be a fresh challenge, and she hoped Finn wouldn't be turned down if he ever needed help. Lauren stressed that it would be temporary, and she wouldn't walk away from Fenmore's. Jack offered to accommodate any schedule she wished, and Lauren agreed to help. Lauren recalled when she'd told Jack she was in over her head and needed help, and he'd stepped in without hesitation to become Nikki's sponsor. Jack reasoned that it was what they did for the people they loved. He received Nikki's text message and showed it to Lauren. Jack noted that Nikki's messages were normally letter perfect, and he concluded that she was drunk and asking him to rescue her. "Enable her is more like it," Lauren muttered. Lauren asked what Jack intended to do, and he replied that Nikki had left him little choice. At the empty glass, the server confirmed the woman Victor was looking for had been there, but he couldn't say for sure what she'd been drinking. Victor answered a call from Jack, who urgently requested to meet to talk about Nikki. Victor replied that he'd be in his office in 15 minutes, and he headed out. Nikki breathed a sigh of relief.